Moses said to the Lord, "You've been telling me, lead these people, but you've not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor with me. If you are pleased with me, teach me your ways, so I may know you and continue to favor with you. Remember that this nation is your people." The Lord replied, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." Then Moses said to him, "If your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here. How will anyone know that you are pleased with me and with your people unless you go with us? What else will distinguish me, your people, from all the other people on the face of the earth?" And the Lord said to Moses, "I will do the very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you, and I know you by name." Then Moses said, "Now show me your glory." And the Lord said, "I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion." But he said, "You cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live." Then the Lord said, "There is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. And then I will remove my hand and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen." And that's John 14. "Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going." Thomas said to him, "Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way?" Jesus answered, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really knew me, you would know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him." Philip said, "Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us." Jesus answered, "Don't you know me, Philip, even after I have been among you such a long time? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'?"
So how do you see the invisible God? In our reflections so far from the book of Exodus, etc., we've had this sort of underlying text, kind of blending some old and new, that God is holy love, and this is a consuming fire, that love is the true danger, love is the greatest risk, love is the most demand, love is the most powerful, and yet love, God, is holy, and holiness is dangerous. And there's this constant need to remember that love is comforting, life-giving, strengthening, forgiving, renewing, but boy is it dangerous and needs proper reverence and proper respect. One of the passions of my ministry is the developing of reverence in the church. Not its pretense, but of reverence, of an authentic, heartfelt, genuine respect for God, and all that then will follow from that. Well, we've looked at God then and his love as the fire that consumes, and we've reflected that we see it for Israel of old in the law of Moses, under the old covenant, the old relationship, the old agreement, the old arrangement or Old Testament. And then the gospel of Jesus in the new covenant, the new relationship, the new agreement, the New Testament. And we've seen this morning in our readings that somebody from the old and somebody from the new both had this request to see God. And neither of them were strangers to God. They were people who longed for a fuller experience of God and to know God full on. But you will have had that experience, I'm sure. I've had it very many times, but I'm sure all Christians have it, at least in our culture, where somebody will say to you something like, I want to see the evidence for God and then I'll believe, or something like that. I have occasionally taken the risk of saying to somebody, what evidence would you like? Because usually a person looks back at me and goes, what? I go, what would you like God to do? But further than that, I'm interested in what do you think it'd be rational for God to do? We live in a rational age. Most of us have a semi-rational or quasi-scientific worldview or something. We want it to be reasonable. And I think it's entirely reasonable to say, actually, what would cut it for me is to see God with my own eyes. That would really help me. Because quite often, when people are trying to explain something to me or trying to make a claim I'm not sure if I can trust, I go, well, can I see it, please? Carol and I have been buying a car recently. I don't buy it unless I can see it, please. You know, I'm just not that trusting, I suppose. I want to see it. I want to meet this thing full on. It's a natural and reasonable thing to do, to make that request. It is, however, completely illogical when applied to God. It is just not logical. Tell you why. It's dead easy. Okay. Moses says, I want to see your glory. I want to see God for who you are. You know, no holds barred, nothing held back. I want to see you as you, God. Philip says to Jesus, the stuff about leaving us is very unsettling. This promise of your Father's house. How are we to handle this? I don't really get where you're going. We're kind of stuck. We don't really understand what you mean by way, truth, and life. Show us the Father, Lord. That's what we really need. And that will be enough for us. So, that's the request, and we all have it. Let me ask you something. How do people see anything? So that's how you see God. Okay. How do you see anything else? How do you see stuff normally if you are blessed with seeing things? Through your eyes, a piece of biology, right? Linked to your brain, another piece of biology. How does the biology see things? It converts images into electrical pulses. You may not have known that. Now you do, right? Which your brain can read, etc. What does your eye need in order to make those images? Light. It's a blend of the physics of light and the biology of the human eye and brain. Is that right? That's how people see stuff. No other animal on the earth sees things that way. Or not the way you do. They have the same biology but different variations of it. Right? So they also need the physics of light and an eye to see and a brain to process. Right? Need to do all those things. But they never see the world as you see it. If you have a dog or a cat at home, don't imagine that it sees as you see. It sees very differently. If you have a bird table, you knew that had to come, right? and you look at a blue tit or something visiting your bird table, you go, look at the colours on that, because if you've ever looked at one carefully, particularly around this time of year, it's pretty astonishing, isn't it? Compared to what a blue tit sees when a blue tit looks at another blue tit, you're seeing in grey drab. They're dazzling to each other. There's a whole range of colours that you and I don't know are even in play. But they see. How we see things is therefore very subjective. Well, it depends on who you are, what your biology is, and how your biology reacts to the physics. Where are physics found? Where are physics found? Yeah, it's found in the universe, right? So if God is the creator of the universe, who existed before there was light, before there was physics, before there was biology, what kind of an idiot expects to be able to see him visually? How is that remotely rational? To say, in order to see the God the Christians claim, I have to see something with my eyes, is plain stupid. It has not understood its own question. It is somebody gibbering who has not thought through what they're asking. Right? It's nonsense. It's a stupid idea. But anyway, even if it was a great idea, it would be an unfair one. Because it would mean that those of you who've got better eyesight than I have and don't need to wear glasses would have a spiritual advantage over me. And I would have a spiritual advantage over my friend David, who can't see with his eyes. So if God's revealed himself by making himself visible to the human eye, I think that would be a grotesque decision of God's. I think that would be morally indefensible. So it's stupid on rational grounds, and a God who did that would not be a good and holy God, in my opinion. Does that mean that nobody is ever going to see God? Well, coming back to Leslie's point now, you see, it's not only a reasonable question until you discover how stupid it is. It is reasonable that it is in fact a mystery who God is and what it is to see God or to know God or to meet with God. So there are some things which form the background to Moses' experience. Number one then, as we've already recognized, God is non-visible. Of course he is, because he created sight, he created light, he created the physics, he created the biology. That's his stuff. He exists before it, outside of it, and after it. He's beyond it. So God is non-visible. Naturally, obviously, that's going to be the case. And God is unapproachable. He's a consuming fire. Why? Well, because he's love. You see, pure love is unapproachable. We've kind of touched on it in our prayers already this morning. You know, pure love. If I go to God, to my Father's house where there are many rooms, and I say, oh, Dad, I'm home. And God says, yes, what did you do for the children of Yemen? Because I love them. Suddenly I realize, oh, love is dangerous. Love is too demanding. Love is the biggest hazard on the planet and in the universe. Because God is love. And that is holy and pure and very strong. And it doesn't prefer me and the people I like over people I'll never meet or whatever. God just loves them and wants to know what I'm doing about loving my neighbor. And suddenly I'm going, oh, I'm not sure this love thing is quite so comfortable as it set out to be. God is unapproachable. You can't find God. You can't get up on Tuesday morning and say, do you know what? Today I think I'll get closer to God. You could say, do you know what? Today I'm going to start saving to go and see the Taj Mahal because I've never seen it and I'd like to. You know what? Today I'm going to go and see Glastonbury Tor. Do you know what? Today, you can't say, do you know what? Today I'm going to see God better. Today I'm going to get closer to God than I've been before. I think it's time I approach God a bit more. You can't get... How do you approach God? It can't be done. It's not available to me or you. God cannot be contained. Last week's lesson of the tabernacle, the temple, buildings in you can't contain God in a building. You can't have God more in here than he is the other side of those windows. Of course not. Right? You don't cause God to come into this building when we say we're going to worship God together now. And you don't cause the end of it when you say a benediction, amen, we're serving tea and coffee. God hasn't suddenly got further away in that moment. We can't contain him. You can't put God in a box. You can't even put God in the Christian faith. Inasmuch as what you know about God and is true, because you are knowing it as a human being, you are holding less than the whole truth about God. Your brain cannot hold the whole truth. Mine can't. All the human brains put together, working together, can't. The only one who can contain the truth of God is God. So whatever we know about God, and we may be knowledge, it may be exactly right, will always be less than God is. God cannot be contained in the living temple, the church, any more than he could be contained in the temple in Jerusalem or the tabernacle in the desert, because God is immeasurable. I like measuring things. That's just a habit of anybody who's hung out with science to any extent. You just realize you can only manage stuff if you measure it. Measuring is very, very effective. You may be old enough as I am to remember. I was a teenager. You may have been in your 20s. I don't know. But do you remember if you're old enough, the impact of the first photographs of planet Earth? That happened in my lifetime. I remember the day well. The very first time that people could see a photo of the planet. It wasn't that long ago. Up to then, there'd never been any photos of planet Earth from anywhere else. And here's the surprising thing. There were no surprises. Nobody sat there looking at the photo and thought, oh, shoot, look, we've always thought Africa was there, but it's over there, look. Or, oh, the sea isn't really like that. Or, ooh, look, we've got that wrong. The photographs were entirely predicted. How? By science. Because science could make the measurements, make the projections, and tell the astronauts, when you get up there and put out your camera and start clicking away, this is what you're going to see. We've never seen it. Nobody's ever seen it. But this is undoubtedly what you will see. And they were right. The only thing they hadn't put into the measure was the effect upon the astronauts of the beauty and the mystery and the awesomeness of doing that and seeing it for themselves. That affected all of them for life. But it was exactly as promised, because science can do that. It just can't do that to God, which means that God is unknowable. Sorry, guys, but you can't decide, I think today I'm going to get to know God. Because God is not knowable like that. You could say, I think today I'm going to get to know Judy. I'm going to hang back when tea and coffee is served, and I'm going to say, do you know, Judy, you and I have never really spoken. I think it's time we spoke and I got to know who you are, and so forth. Or something like. You could do that with Judy. You can't do that with God, because God is beyond you. There is a religious habit that people have, we've always had it, Christians have it as well, of making idols. You wouldn't believe the idolatry that happens in Christian fellowships, where material things become invested with special meaning, gaudy meaning, and now you can't touch them unless you're a somebody or other, or you know, whatever it may be, or whatever. It's called idolatry. It's where you invest God quality into an item. I once went to a God shop. I was in Southeast Asia, I've been into several temples of a particular type of persuasion and seen the idols there, and they were difficult for me to understand. I happened to be walking down the street and there was a god shop. So I thought, I'll go in there, see if I can learn something. So I went into the god shop, and the various gods that you could buy were put out on shelves and so forth. And the guy who made them, his wife was at the front, but he was out the back. You could see through the doors, big doors. He was in his workshop making gods. But unfortunately, I didn't speak their language, they didn't speak mine, so a few gestures really didn't cut it. But about a week later, I was in a temple, and the guy who was the caretaker and sort of supervisor of daily life in the temple had actually had an earlier job on freighters and oil tankers and so forth. He'd traveled the world, and he'd learned English, pretty good English. So I said, I've been longing to ask somebody, because all my friends from this part of the world are Christians, so they can't answer the question. I need to know, it's a tree now? He goes, yeah. It's a god now? When does it stop being wood from this tree and become this? Where does the god come in? Is the god in the spiritual realm and comes in and does? I need to know, because I don't understand. And we had a long conversation, but I didn't know the right question. I was a complete novice at this. I didn't know the right questions to ask him. We had to sort of finish the conversation saying we're both nice men, because that was about, we couldn't properly discuss this because he didn't get my question, and I didn't know how to express it in terms that he would get it. If that's even doable, I don't know. But I thought, this is crazy, and yet I see it in the church and in people of all religions all the time. This business of idolatry. It troubled Isaiah the prophet, and it troubles God. And God spoke through Isaiah the prophet to a scene of his people getting invested in idol worship. And he says to them in chapter 40, do you not know? Haven't you heard? Has this not been told you since the beginning of time? God sits enthroned above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers or something. He stretches out the heavens, spreading them out like a tent to live in. He brings the princes of this world to naught, the rulers of the earth to nothing. No sooner are they planted, no sooner are they sown, no sooner do they take root in the ground than he blows on them, and they wither. And the whirlwind sweeps them away like chaff. To whom will you compare me? Or who is my equal? Says the Holy One. Lift your eyes. Look to the heavens. Who created all those? He who leads out the starry host one by one and calls them each by name, because of his great power and mighty strength. Not one of them is missing. So why do you say, O Jacob, and complain, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, my cause is disregarded by my God? Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow weary. Young adults stumble and fall. But those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up on wings like eagles. They will run and not get weary. They will walk and never faint. And Isaiah is telling them, for goodness sake, folk, this is basic. This has been known since the beginning of time. It can't have missed you. What are you trusting in, for goodness sake? What are you putting your faith in? Where are you headed? You need the everlasting God way beyond your idols, way beyond what you're so far praying, way beyond what you've so far grasped. And I love Isaiah for his poetry in this, because with his poetry it's kind of like music or like the visual arts or something else. In the end, our statements are not enough. Our doctrines are not enough. Our true statements about God are not enough. God is so vast, he won't be contained. It needs to break out into expressions of praise beyond us and into the heavens themselves. God is too vast, too sacred, too holy. But Moses said, and I want thing he's not doing it. Thanks very much. How careful God is with Moses with his request. First of all, Moses says, yeah, but God, I want to see you more. I want to see you full on. I want to see your glory. And God says, well, okay, but that would be fatal. You couldn't withstand that. So come over here, see the rocky place? Stand on that rocky place. Just right there, Moses. Stand there, because I'm going to pop you. See beside you, a little cleft. And I'm going to tuck you in to that cleft in the rock. And I'm going to walk past you. I'm going to let my presence come close. That's going to be too much for you. So I'm going to put you in a safe place, in safe circumstances. But I'm going to put my hand on you so that you can cope. I'm going to cover your eye until the very last microsecond. And then I'll remove my hand and you'll be able to see the after effects of my passing. You'll be able to see me after I've been with you. You'll have hindsight. You will glimpse me as you glimpse somebody who's just gone by. You'll get the after effects, but the full-on effect, you're not going to get that. That would kill you. That would frazzle you before it had got started. Writing to the Colossians, Paul says, guys, what you need to understand is this. Jesus is the image that makes visible the invisible God. Jesus is the image that makes visible the invisible God. Jesus is the image of God. Jesus makes the unseeable seen, the untouchable touched, the unlistenable to heard, the unreceivable received. Jesus is that. As John put it in his introduction to his gospel, no one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's heart, who has made him known. Amen.